welcome to the Nita Black Show. A lot of crazy stuff be going on when you're trying to get the show up and on. But we go with the flow, and everything seems to come together through a little maneuvering with equipment and whatnot. But we're going to go ahead and continue our series. His Name is My Name Too, Black Community Reparations Initiative. And we're going to start you off with a poem. And this one is called Educated Fool. You have a lot of black youth and black young people, black adults, that think they know more than elders. Now, while there are some elders who did not educate themselves and pay attention to some of the things that were going on, and there are some elders that were have some responsibilities about for a lot of the things that happened with the trick of integration. Just being, 60, 70, 80 years old, you have at least experienced some things that the youth have not experienced. And so we want to make sure that we are not discounting those experiences that our elders have been through, because we, as young people, can learn a lot from those experiences. But, of course, the whole white-controlled entertainment industry has black youth thinking that they are more educated than those who came before them. So we just want to make sure that we're kind of giving them a little reality check. And this one is called Educated Fools. They got straight A's in a white man's school. Are they educated fools? They know math backwards and forward, but they cannot find a black reason for it. Excuse me. They learned every piece of science that they could learn, yet they're still sitting and waiting for a savior's return. They learned multiple languages, but they sound dumb when they speak, because it's getting them nowhere. It's the wrong knowledge they seek. They seek knowledge to make them feel above the rest, but they don't seek the knowledge that makes them the absolute best. They still sound unintelligent because they still curse when they talk. They talk a good game, but they don't walk the walk. They are trying so hard to be infinitely wise, yet they can't see the things right before their own eyes. I think they've been duped. I think they've been had, because they just went from weakness to dysfunctionally bad. Black history showed elders that when blacks get it right, the universe will shed more of its infinite light. But what these blacks have gotten is what some call fool's gold. They believe all the fables so more books can be sold. But it seems they only replace one religion for another. When it comes right down to it, they're still surrounded by messed up sisters and brothers. Brothers still treat sisters bad, though they say they're family. They are as messed up and dysfunctional as any group of black people can be. Sisters treat all the brothers bad. They curse and they cheat. They plot and they sneak into other men's sheep. Their children are smart. They're educated real fine. But they're still a messed up part of this black world that we find. They think they are somehow better than other blacks that they see. They are as messed up as other blacks that don't know their black history. They walk around with their noses up, yet their brains on the ground. They can't do a thing about the black problems they see around town. But some of them make an effort, but it's real history they lack. They prefer made-up history about how whites were once black. An elephant used to be a rhino, I guess. Then one gene split from the others, so one rules over the less. They ask things like, what evil forces and where did evil begin? They're so stuck on the beginning that they're reaching their end. Their enemies know blacks' weaknesses. They were sent here to make blacks confused. Blacks only believe in 10% in black history, so 90% is removed. Black history is replaced by white men to control blacks, though blacks say that it's not. But there's a large chunk of black history that these blacks haven't got. It's the piece most important of the pieces removed. It's the piece that they're supposed to fix, the piece their children will lose. It's the black world here and now that needs their concentration. If they don't fix their part now, they'll mess up other black generations. Our elders got straight A's too, without any hesitation. The difference is they got straight A's in a black world education. Now we have a bunch of miseducated blacks whose children will have no defense, and a bunch of smart, white, educated black folks whose children will have no black common sense. That's a Black Panther poem from Nita Black from 1974. And we're going to go ahead and get into our seniors portion of the His Name is My Name Too, Black Community Reparations Initiative. Now, there are a couple of things that occurred with black seniors. Of course, during the slave trade, at the beginning of each of the 9 slave trades, elders were the most suspicious of whites coming into villages and kingdoms and territories. So elders were avoided by whites. White people would try to get to the children and try to get to the young people, but would avoid elders and try to get the children to not tell the elders about the white people being there. You see the same thing occurs now. I see a bunch of white organizations, and they are getting all of this funding from, if you look at the average white organization in a Negro community, you will find if you pull their paperwork, you will find that they get most of their funding either from the CDC or from the Department of Justice. And the reason for that is that these white organizations are used to track Negro children. The things that they are promoting to the Negro children are the very things that are destroying black communities. They promote whites as being the saviors and being all good, and while at the same time promoting blacks as not being able to take care of themselves, as not being able to take care of their neighborhoods, and as not being able to take care of their children. And so as black communities, we see this, but it is usually the older people who tend to speak out about it. I know there is a bus that people were complaining about, and there's it has all this Jesus stuff on it. Jesus written like back in the 70s in all these different rainbow colors, sort of the gay colors that the gays in the 70s used to paint their buses up with. And there's this white guy, and he looks like he's about 79, 80, old. If you didn't know better, you would think he was one of those old Klan guys from the 70s. But you see him driving this yellow school bus with all this different color painting, letters on it. And on the bus is about 30 to 40 Negro children. and I think the oldest look like they're about 13 or 14. But he's got these 30 to 40 children. The youngest looks like they're about 6, and you got 30 or 40 black children from the ages of 6 to 13 or 14, and you see this bus in the middle of the day. You also see this bus at 10:30 and 11 o'clock at night. And you think back to the time, because so many young people are not up on history, not educated properly about the things that occurred. You think about something like this going through a black neighborhood during the Atlanta child murders, and you think about, you have a black man that has been in prison for since the Atlanta child murders, Wayne Williams, and then you look and see, because one of the things that he says is that he confessed because of whatever reasons he gave, intimidation, duress, all that good stuff. But the claim that there were white Klan members that were taking those black children and killing those black children and mutilating those black children back there in the 70s. And then to see here in the new millennium that you see a white guy, old white guy, that has access. Some black parents gave him access to their children, 6 to 13 or 14 years old. And you see how easy it would be for these children to come up missing and mutilated and dead. And you're like, how can black people, after experiencing the Atlanta child murders, actually turn their children over at all times of the day and night to this person? And when elders see it, of course, the memories of all those of white guys passing through Negro neighborhoods and trying to get black children to get into their cars, and elders having to tell them, get away from there. You have elders that remember the images and the experiences of black males walking along the street or the highway or wherever and being snatched into a Klan member's car, and the next thing you know, that black male is found, hung in a tree or floating in a river or mutilated or burned somewhere behind some warehouse or whatever. But since the 70s, one of the things that occurred in the 70s is that before integration, black children, black young people, put a lot of value, put a lot of weight, put a lot of respect into black senior citizens' opinions and stories of the past and the different experiences that black grandparents and great-grandparents had been through. And then with integration came the 70s, where you had white people telling black young people, don't trust anybody over 30. And so, unfortunately, many black young people trying to fit in with white people adopted this notion of not listening to anyone over 30, which means that they no longer had access to those parents and those grandparents and parents and great-grandparents that was able to let them know the things that had occurred before. And you know that this was demonic programming, because that's what elders are here for, to guide you through the things that those elders were guided through and have been through. And so many of the children that before integration learned, everything that they could about their names and their family lineage and, their grandparents' name, their great-grandparents' name, the places where their grandparents and great-grandparents came from, the people, the cousins, everybody. Now you had with integration from 1970 to the present, you have this I don't care about my past mentality. And so if you look at the generations, you basically see a portion of the black population that appears to have only started at 1970, and they don't know anything before 1970. They may know a little bit of music, they may know a little bit of stuff from the 70s, but if they were born in the 80s, they know very little from the 70s. If they were born in the 90s, they have learned very little about the 80s. And so you see young children today that were born in the new millennium, and they know very little about the 90s. And so each generation now is being disconnected, separated from the generation before them. So children that are, 1 to 10 years old now are completely detached and separated from their siblings, which are 11 to 19 years old. And, the 11 to 19-year-olds are in this world of their own with video games and whatnot, and are completely detached from their siblings that are 20 to 29-year-olds. And the 20 to 29-year-olds are out there trying to fit into white society and get, advance their white education or, get into the employment situation and conform to the whole employment aspect. And so they're completely separated and detached from their younger siblings. And then you have, of course, the 30 to 40-year-olds who are out there trying to chase that dollar and, buy stuff that keep up with the white Joneses. And so they are finding themselves detached from even their children that are 20, 10, newborns, whatever. And so there's just, you got 6 living generations at any one given time. And each of those generations now are completely separate. The seniors are over here in the senior center or in a room by themselves watching television. You have the parents that are, work from sun up to sundown like slaves and, barely get to see the children. You have the teenagers, the college children that go off to college or are in their own world. You have the teenagers that are usually on the phone or the internet or whatever, detached from the rest of the family. And then you have the 10-year-olds that are playing video games or watching cartoons and completely detached from the rest of the family. So integration has done a lot of damage, but the whole notion of integration was a trick that was played by whites on black seniors. We would not have integration if the blacks of the past had not fell for it. Now, if you think about how integration was able to be perpetrated onto blacks at the time, it required 3 different aspects in order to get people to go along with it. Because your first notion when you talk about integration is you think about, well, wait, these people have done some horrible things to us. Whites have harmed our family members. They've they've raped black women and girls. They've killed black males, and now you're telling us to be a part of that, to try and be with them? That doesn't make any sense. So in order to push this thing, and remember, Northern whites pushed integration in order to get a foothold in Southern territory. So you had all these blacks in Southern territory, and the South pretty much had the legislative Congress situation sold up. And so in order to get that foothold politically, you needed these black bodies, these black voices, these black votes. And so in order to do that, you had to trick black people into fighting for something that would be beneficial to the Northern whites. If Northern whites helped black people get the vote, then Northern whites were convinced that black people would have that loyalty, and it worked like a charm. So you have this situation of blacks being hit on three sides. Suddenly you got black preachers telling them that the whites from the north, the Jewish whites, the whatever, are good people and are coming down to help us, poor black folks, against these Southern white folks. And then you had the school system that did not want blacks there, north or south. But now you got the school system saying that these Northern whites and these Jewish whites are good people, and they're coming down to teach us poor black folks so that we can be as smart as white folks and, be able to fight against the injustices that are happening to us in the South. And then, of course, you have the black entertainers telling you how wonderful it is to be equal with white folks in entertainment, and to be able to have the same cars as white folks, the same diamonds and jewelry, and drink the same liquor as white folks, and go to the same restaurants as white folks, even though many of those entertainers were still having to deal with the same Jim Crowism in those restaurants. It was excused by black, and it was covered over by white. So it gave black entertainers the illusion that, oh, well, that's just that person doing that. It's not the restaurant. And, if I have a little bit more money, or if I give a little bit more money, if I give a bigger tip or whatever, then I can overcome that hatred. And so, there was just all of these blind illusions that were being perpetrated on black people to make them think. And then you had all the songs, "We have overcome, blacks and whites together." And so, you got Martin Luther King, and he was used by whites to promote white supremacy as, okay, well, we're going to move out of the poor, dilapidated Negro neighborhoods, and we're going to move up to white society. We're going to move to white companies because they're better companies. We're going to move to our children to white schools because they're better schools. We're going to move to white neighborhoods because they're better neighborhoods. And I don't think he really realized until it was too late that he was the #1 promoter at the time of white supremacy. And it's hard when you're caught up in it to realize that you are being used as a spokesperson for whites. But that is what he was. He kept trying to speak for blacks, but he kept finding himself, because of his white-controlled religion and his belief in a white Savior, Jesus Christ Savior, that he found himself constantly promoting whites as good and promoting the things that blacks had and did as bad. And I don't think that was his intention. But a lot of seniors look back on that time and they think, while they have fond memories of Martin Luther King, many of them have to admit that integration really messed up their neighborhoods. You talk to black seniors, and they used to know the last names of all of the children in the neighborhood. You knew that this child was, one of the Smith's children. You knew this child right here was one of the Atkins children. And you knew that Atkins had 12, and this was the smallest, and this was the oldest. And you knew this was the Atkins uncle. And, there were certain things you just knew. And now, you talk to seniors in the black community, and they don't even know the children's real names. They don't even know the children's names, period. They don't even know the children's nicknames. They just know that's that little boy that be on the corner. And that's a crying shame. That is one of the detrimental things that occurred with integration, is that separating of the generations meant that neither one knew each other. You got children standing on the corner that don't know the name of the elderly person that lives up the street. And so, now she's just that old lady in that greenhouse, or that old lady in that gray house. And so, the separation has become so enormous that it is going to be a serious reparation situation, a repairing situation for black folks to bring those generations back together again, because of the amount of mental dysfunction that has gone on. And you are going to have to take on those three entities that were used by whites, and you're going to have to bring those entities out of black communities where so the damage can be stopped. And that's hard for a lot of people, to think that you're going to have to get rid of all of these white-controlled black churches. That's very hard for people to think about, especially senior citizens, because they have been programmed to see the church as their only salvation to the white Jesus. And so to see the churches being moved out of the black community and, black community centers being brought in, it's going to be difficult at first, but they will get to see the results of that coming back together of black families, and it has to be done. When you talk about, black politicians and black educators being replaced, they have some educators and politicians that these senior citizens have known for 20, 30, 40 years, and they just kind of keep putting the same people back in there because they know them, even though they know that they haven't done anything, and in worst cases, they have actually sold black communities to white corporations and white government agencies, white organizations. They know the detrimental damage that has been done by these educators and politicians, yet they just, it's either that or nothing, so they pick that. But, it's going to be very hard for them seeing many of these educators and politicians replaced by people who really believe in bringing the black community back together. And, of course, the entertainers. Blacks get very involved with the black entertainers and feel like they know them. And even though they see these entertainers promoting things that are detrimental to black communities, that are detrimental to black children and young people,